Take two. I'm just gonna roll in. All right. I'm just gonna smile through all this. All right. Have you ever wondered what makes you you? In 2013, the population of the human race was just over 7 billion. It sounds like a lot of people, but inside each of us, we have close to 3 billion base pairs split between our 23 chromosomes.
On April 14, 2003, Human Genome Project.
We can edit it out.
Human Genome Project announced their successful completion of a mapping of a human genome. For several participants in the study, blood samples were collected, mapped, cross-examined to determine where in the genetic code certain physical traits were found. The completion of the Human Genome Project was allowed us to expand our knowledge of what makes us who we are.
This brings us to bioinformatics. Bioinformatics is the science of collecting and analyzing complex biological information, such as genetic codes. The main goal of bioinformatics is to help us as a species to better understand ourselves. This is where big data comes in.
Big data is a term used to describe data sets that are so large and complex that the traditional data processing application could never dream of handling them. The sharing, storage, and visualization of searching for this data proves to be an increasingly difficult endeavor in modern computing. But why is it important? What does big data have to do with bioinformatics?
To map the human genome, each base pair must be analyzed by a computer. Sounds simple, but it's not. To extract meaningful information from a single person's genome, it takes research labs between a couple of weeks to several months of processing. Harvesting genomes at a population scale produces upwards of 40 million gigabytes of data each year.
Each person's genome must be individually processed, but modern computers are hardly capable of processing such vast amounts of data. Genome mapping produces large amounts of serial data, which is data that must be read sequentially. Processor clock speeds have not drastically increased since 2004. However, the utilization of multi-core processing has.
If every person would have their genome mapped at birth, then each person would be a valuable source of information to be used in the global pool of genetic understanding. The immediate goal of genomically enriched health records is to explain the implications of gene variants to physicians. This would allow physicians to quickly and more effectively understand what effects drugs will have on individual patients.
A major concern for those involved in bioinformatics community is how their personal health information is kept safe. While keeping the data private may not be as big an issue, understanding when it is appropriate to use someone's genetic history is a subject that has not been touched on.
The line between ethical and not ethical has yet to be established, and it's not a comforting idea for those participating in this new research to allow their genetic identity to be used as the researcher wants it to be. This brings up the issue of who owns this information, and will it bring any bad consequences along with it, such as discrimination because of genetic history?
A solution for this challenge would be to establish a line of communication only through the clients and the researchers by using a system of devices that is not connected to any outside source. So storing the large amounts of data locally and only sharing them through localized based computing would be a way to keep the information safe and to keep the patient's genome private and secure. Another main issue is how communication between different researchers is completely lacking in this community. Because of the large amount of new information that is allocated with the adolescent field, researchers have few ways of knowing how everyone else is processing and storing their data.
This causes a major problem When thinking about the idea of collaboration between different sources of information, formatting of this data has been inconsistent, and posing a large problem in the larger picture of things. To advance in uncovering the entirety of human genetics, it will take every institute that is researching this information to eventually collaborate to truly break everything down.
Without proper formatting, this will be nearly impossible because of the amount of time that it takes to process the data to begin with. These firms cannot continue to reprocess their data for the sake of communicating and expect to make any progress in the short run. A solution for this is simple.
A globalized standard for processing human genetic information with specific constraints that will be created together by those currently doing the research. This would allow for easy communication between different researching facilities, a unified standard for doing this kind of work, and could also lead to more secure information because everything will be easier to process and deal with.
This idea could also work with a functioning software that is only available to this section of the scientific community. With a single globalized program to do the processing for every company that is doing this kind of research, the processing of information and communication between those different researchers would also certainly increase both in functionality but also simplicity.
Farnsworth.
I like that. I like not saying
that went good, man.